So, welcome everyone to the final masterclass in Rhythm Section's Future Proof series. I'm Emily, also known as EJ or Echo Juliet. I'm a DJ, producer, and a percussionist, and I'm one of the two people that runs the Future Proof program for Rhythm Section alongside Henry, who's out in the room somewhere. And yeah, really warm welcome to everyone who's watching online and to everyone in the room here at Jumbie as well in Peckham. It's brilliant to have you all here. For those of you who don't know, Future Proof grew out of Rhythm Section's Patreon during lockdown, which offered online masterclasses and mentoring, but we really wanted to make that offer free and open to everyone, which is how we came to be doing this here today. Alongside today's session, we've had masterclasses from Moxie, Bradley Zero, Tash LC, Rough Doug. All of those are on Rhythm Section's YouTube if you want to go check them out. But today, I'm very pleased to welcome Alex Ives of Ninja Tune, Big Dada. He's also an artist and runs his own label. Many hats, metaphorically.
Yeah, loads of hats, but just one head, so they're just piled up here.
So yeah, I mean, we'll hopefully touch on all the different things that you do in the course of this chat. You run a label, you work at a label, you're an artist. Maybe we should kick off with what you do at Ninja Tune.
Sure, yeah. So hello everyone, nice to meet you. So I've been at Ninja for 10 years now, just over 10 years. So currently I'm head of physical retail. So that's basically when we have records coming out, I talk to the record shops, primarily the independent record shops. So that's online as well as brick and mortar, which we call it, so ones you can walk into, but not so much Amazon and HMV, so that's what you would not consider an independent record shop. And sometimes it's as simple as just letting them know, hey, we've got this record coming out, you should take a listen, have a chat with them. And then other times it's arranging things from in-stores, getting posters on the windows, events, all sorts of bits really. And personally, for me, I love it because it's just chatting to people like me who love music. There's really not an awful lot of finessing you need to do. You just kind of go in, you chat to them about the music. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Doesn't, will it sell? Great, let's figure out something fun to do. And for me, I find it one of the most tangible parts of working at a label because you're working with the folk that are going to sell a record to a fan that's going to take that record home, and it's really tangible. Like, I appreciate the importance of streaming and downloading. I think it's very important, but I think I'm a bit of a romantic, so I find that really charming part of it. I also label manage, along with one of my colleagues, Big Dada, which is a label we relaunched a year and a bit ago. Big Dada is a sub-label of Ninja Tune, which was started in the 90s and sort of unofficially became a bit defunct in the last few years. The original founder left, went on and he's a writer, so writing books. And in the wake of George Floyd, BLM, and an awful lot of those kind of discussions that came out of that, we wanted to set up some discussions with our CEO about things we think could be done better. And one of many things that we did, we wanted to relaunch Big Dada, exclusively run by people of colour, people from minority ethnic backgrounds within Ninja, and exclusively they're the decision makers. So we're kind of doing that as well, as just trying to find other models that could work within existing structures. So that's another thing we're doing. And then I kind of started working at Ninja doing digital stuff. So I've gone all the way from digital over to physical. So
You've gone back in time.
I've become less progressive, actually. I just,
Amazing. Could you tell us a bit about, because it was great to get an understanding of like what your role is and what you're doing. Could you tell us a bit about some of the other departments and teams that exist within Ninja and how what you do like interacts with
Absolutely,
them?
yeah. I mean, Ninja's, for those that aren't aware, it's a label that's been around 32 years now. We've got an office in Los Angeles as well as in London. And one thing that I think when we've had interns or when we've had folk coming through is quite good is we have an awful lot in-house. So I've been at smaller labels before I was at Ninja where it's, 2 or 3 people running it, and PR, sync, publishing, design, manufacturers, all outsourced. Just because they're a small team. But because Ninja's quite a big Big in terms of personnel. We've got like probably nearly 80 people worldwide, which for an independent, that's pretty big. We've got a lot in house, so we've got manufacturing. Obviously, we manufacture at manufacturing plants, but we have our manufacturing team that design and lay up everything, and can work with artists on their vision if they want to do different kinds of vinyl, CD products. We've got that in-house, we can work with them. Sync and publishing, so the folk that will try and get the music onto adverts, TV shows, etc. We've got project managing, A&R, all of that's in-house. So it means that we get a really good understanding of working well together. Where I kind of sit between the folk that are making the records, a project manager who, let's call that the shepherd of the campaign, just making sure all the parts are going in the right direction. And then fulfillment, warehouse folk, and then distributors. So even though a distributor, quite literally, let's say on a physical term, will get the record from a warehouse into a record shop, a big part of what they do as well is sort of what I do, selling that into the record shop, making them, if you think how many records are out each week, there's an awful lot that you go, okay, and I say it on purpose, but you're competing with for space and for people's attention. So it's also trying to like big it up, be like, this is the one you should stock, put it on your windows, on the website, etc. But because we've got a big operation, we take a lot of it in-house because we kind of feel like maybe we can take the most care and bespoke approach of it. And the beauty of that is everything that happens, so let's say we get a really nice retail result, I can go tell the streaming team who talk to Spotify and Apple, hey, we've got a bunch of in-stores across all the rough trades across the UK, and then they're going to go to New York and do one in New York. That's a good bit of promo. Oh, let's tell the press team that. Okay, that's great. And actually, that means we might sell more records. Let's repress a few more of this in an American edition. So it means we can be really nimble, relatively speaking, because we're all in-house. I can be like, hey, just got this through. What do you reckon? Cool, should we do this, that, or the other? And it means we can be quite dynamic in that regard. So that's where I sort of sit. And then if you kind of look at the structure of it, it kind of works similarly in the digital team, the people that do the digital distribution. So that's getting it on the Spotify's, the Apples, Amazons, Tidals, etc. They all work closely with the teams that do the pitching and the press team. So let's say, or the radio team, Animac wants to do a first play, or whoever. We actually need to deliver this at a certain time so it comes after the first play. And again, that can kind of be a benefit of being quite in-house. And then that will impact on maybe when we put the vinyl on sale. So we're really quite bespoke in how we try to do things. And I don't know, I kind of find that useful. And I kind of have this philosophy whenever new folk come in, I was like, learn your job and smash that, but learn a bit about the people either side of you, just so that you can understand the whole machine, so to speak, and it can kind of help you work with one another. I don't know if that makes sense or any of that was gobbledygook.
No, that was great. Thank you. That was like an amazingly comprehensive overview in a short amount of time.
Okay, smashing.
Yeah. You mentioned like new folk coming in. I know you're quite passionate about getting young people who might not normally think they could work in those kind of roles into businesses like Ninja Tune. Yeah. What kind of entry level roles are there now, and what might there be in future that maybe we haven't thought about yet?
Yeah, that's a wicked question, and I think, just to preface that, is that sometimes the hardest thing is even knowing what jobs exist. I know when I started, I was like, A&R, yeah, that's a thing. Press, that's a thing. Booking, that's a thing. I just didn't know anything else about it. And half of the battle is actually starting to understand, okay, there's publishing, sync, distro, retail, blah, 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 a load of the things I just mentioned. So within those roles, sometimes the less jazzy ones are actually quite a great entry into it. So my first entry into it was, I started interning at a little label in Brighton called Fat Cat. There's like three or four guys that worked there, and they were like, cool, you're going to do the newsletter. was like, cool, I've never done a newsletter before. I was like, cool, figure it out. Well, you know, it could have been a bit more guidance, but it meant, okay, actually, I can do that. And then from that, it was, I think I can do some digital bits. And from that, it started to be that what roles exist digitally. So probably because of when I started 10 years ago, just before streaming became so dominant in what it was, it's like, okay, well, you understand how to upload something to SoundCloud, which is as simple as it sounds perhaps nowadays. Back then it was like, oh, I mean, yeah, I guess so. Okay, so you're young, you do that. So I think sometimes in terms of looking ahead, what's evolving now? Okay, we're talking about AI, we're talking about Web3, we're talking about a lot of these other areas. That's great to be aware of it, because I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that's probably where an awful lot of expertise is going to be missing from even my generation, because I'm not the first person using TikTok. I'm not the first person, so I'm learning it. But there's like, my sister probably knows more about it than me, and my little sister, she doesn't work in music. In terms of currently, I think there's loads of jobs going in like, it sounds dead dry, but like data input stuff. So for example, in publishing, you need to get a lot of metadata, put it into spreadsheets, make sure that goes off to the collection agency so that they can start to pay the artists. And from that, there's a trajectory into, understand publishing. Maybe there's a role in creative sync. Oh, actually, maybe you know a bit about music, you've got a good musical ear, you could get into A&R to bring in artists that could be good to sign to be songwriters, as an example. For me, it was, I didn't realise I was quite good at understanding how to upload stuff to the back end of iTunes, for example. So then I started going through the catalogue at Domino Records, which was an internship I had before Ninja, and just going through their back cat and uploading it all onto iTunes. And then from that, I got a job at Ninja Tune doing distribution, because I knew the difference between a WAV and a FLAC and a JPEG and a TIFF or whatever, which sounds dead simple, but actually the folk that have been working there a long time didn't have to think about that stuff. So I would say probably a lot of people now already have a lot of the skills. It's just refining them and understanding how you can say, no, actually, you probably already know how to do a bunch of this stuff, just reframing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a DJ and you put your music in record box, you know what metadata is. Boom. Because hopefully you have a fairly organised music collection and
exactly
things are labelled.
I was just chatting to you beforehand, and there was a job going today at Sony as a content coordinator, something like that. Content. Basically, it was, do you know the difference between a WAV and an MP3? Plug it into a distribution platform, and working with another team to make sure the right information goes in it. Sounds dead fancy, the name, but the reality is someone's just got to show you how to do it, if you haven't already, and there's a lot of tools out there for you to just practice. I was telling this young guy I was sort of mentoring, I was like, just go and open a TuneCore account, just practice. Once you've done it once or twice, it's on your CV, I've distributed music. So sometimes I think it's pulling away the mystique and not getting too afraid of what the job title says. Just do it, and you've done it. That's real experience then. Doesn't always have to be through someone that's employed you.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're doing it for friends, helping friends out.
Best way. It's the best way. I think that's the best way. Like, you know, I said this to some people I was chatting to, like, when I started 10 years ago, it was a different landscape. But now, an awful lot of the barriers, financially speaking, for example, have gone away. So as long as you've got an internet connection and let's say a laptop, and I appreciate that it's still a privileged position to be in, but if you have those things, you can set up a Bandcamp, you can put your music on it. Well, you've just distributed something online, and that can be then available to everyone in the world, and you can record a bit of music, put it on Bandcamp, put it out, there you go. Maybe you're a label now. You know, you want to do booking, but it's really hard to get a job. Maybe you just got a couple of mates. You've got a mate in Birmingham, you've got a mate in Manchester, you've got a mate in Edinburgh. Oh, let me just help you get a couple gigs. I'll get you some floors to sleep on. And, all right, you've just booked your mate their first UK tour. 3 dates, done.
And now your mate's got an agent, which makes them look good.
Right, and now you've been a booker. And I think some people think it has to be much bigger to start to feel validated in those roles. And I think that's a really big hurdle, but if you can start to feel empowered in what you're doing, that can really change how quickly you start to believe in yourself. I know that can sound a bit, maybe not as tangible as some other things, but I know that was something for me to get my head around.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important point. Since we were sort of talking about the future and what things might look like and how things are changing, I mean, part of your job is around physical music, records.
Yeah. Ain't changed, yeah.
CDs, which is actually like quite a fast-changing landscape at the moment, I guess. I mean, what's your take on how things are going now and what direction they might be going in with physical music?
In some ways, it's not changing very much, but in other ways, I think there's two areas, I guess, right? And I think one area is people are becoming, I say people, some people, and I hope more people do, are becoming more aware of the impact on the environment of manufacturing. And the reality is you're making a lot of single-use plastic, you're making a lot of stuff that doesn't sell and gets put in landfill. The reality of how we make records is so ineffective. You know, you go, maybe we'll sell 5,000. Oh, damn, I only sold 1,000. Oh, damn, we've only pressed 500. We need 1,000 more. Fuck. And then, so it's really, really hard to be precise in that. And whilst you can recycle vinyl, that still means you've got to ship it somewhere. You've got to ship it back. You've got to use all the kind of impacts on the environment just to get to the point where you recycle it. CDs, landfill. So on that regard, there is people looking into more ways of trying to be more ecological with how we're manufacturing and how we can re-educate consumers to be cool with little defects. You buy a record and maybe it's got a little bit of a bent corner. If you ship it back, then they can't resell that. It goes to waste, and then you've had to like. So if actually people are like, okay, you know what, it is what it is, and unless there's an actual fault with it, that's one thing. Another thing is getting rid of like cellophane. The reason cellophane really exists is so that when they receive your record, it's less likely to be damaged. What happens? You pull it off, you put it in the bin, it goes to landfill more often than not. If we could be cool with the fact that, hey, you know what, warts and all, it comes, but I can still play the record. It feels like a small thing, but I think it's a start. And I was chatting to you a lot before, but like the way we make things, it is, you know, minimum 500, 500, 1,000, depending on how much you're pressing. That's maybe you only want to sell 50. It costs a bit too much to do that. In my mind, let's say over the next 10 years, if we could get to a situation you could, let's say 3D printing evolve to the point where you could really create high fidelity things. You could just print on demand, no waste. That would be a dream, right?
That'd be amazing.
So I think that's one area that I think people are looking at. It's going to take a bit of time, A, technologically to get there, and B, then re-educating the consumer to be cool with that. You know, if you print on demand, it's going to take a bit longer to reach you. So maybe next day delivery is not a thing, but if people are cool with that. The other side to it, I think, is consumer habits, which has been an interesting one. Vinyl's obviously had a wee bit of a resurgence over the last 5+ years, and I think for many people, that's wicked. I think that's wicked, and I think you look at a lot of formats. We're in a access economy as opposed to an ownership economy. Like, why own a car when you can zip car? Why have a book collection when you could Kindle it? Why have a record collection when you could just have everything on Spotify? So if you're choosing to buy something, that's a massive testament to the fact that I want to own it. I want to be a patron of the arts. I'm going to make a space in my house to put, or flat to put it in. That's in an era where you don't have to do that. So I think that shows that there's still an awful lot of love to investing in something that you find passionate. So I think that won't change. And I think in many ways that's been an entry point to people. I think you see a lot of folk maybe getting a bit sassy when people are buying records, they ain't got record players yet. I think on the opposite, that's the best thing ever. Like, you're buying something before you even have the ability to play it. That's how much you want to get involved in being a music collector. But what I would love to see is people thinking of CDs, right? You could probably get all your classics, like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin 1, the White Album, Nevermind, whatever, just your classics. You probably get that for like 20 quid and you start a record collection. and it's just about investing. Play them on CDs, share them with your mates. I think sometimes it's just about being dynamic in how you want to start your collection and investing in these things. So I think people are like pretty romantic about it still as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice point. I think it's like buying physical music has become like a symbol of fandom.
For real, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Do you know, like people, like you chat to like perhaps your parents' generation when like they could only buy records and they'd get that record. It was hard to get and they'd go to school with it, like proud, like I got that record. I'm part of that. And actually, I think it's coming back a wee bit. You know, maybe it's in the form of a tote bag and I've got this in it or whatever. But I think that's pretty cool. Personally, maybe I'm out of touch, but that's my opinion.
No, I think that's a really lovely thing to hold on to. And yeah, you touched there on the sustainability thing. It'd be really interesting to hear a bit more about like what Ninja's doing around being sustainable, because I know that's quite a big kind of concern.
Yeah, like our CEO, he's really putting an awful lot of time and effort into finding ways in which we can try to be a bit more sustainable. Like Ninja committed to being carbon negative as of last year. Oftentimes that's offsetting carbon emissions that have gone into making the records, etc. And being part of lobbying groups, again, exploring some of the stuff I've been talking about. You know, some things are working, some things are not. For example, one that didn't quite take off was a collection of labels and distributors had a nearly mint, what was it called? Something like nearly mint editions, which is all the stuff I said. Maybe there's a defect on the print, maybe there's the label's a bit scratched, but the music's fine, we'll sell them at a discount. So it didn't quite take off, and I think that's a audience education thing. Like, but it's just trying to look at these initiatives, looking at biodegradable packaging. It all sounds really simple when you think of it, but you know, you've got to find the manufacturer to do it, and you've got to find the distribution ways and finding out, okay, maybe the manufacturer's in France, so I need to find a green vehicle to get it here. So they're kind of just working on those types of initiative, and then, like I say, offsetting it with like planting trees and other various bits and bobs that can try to balance it as much as possible when you're still manufacturing. If you consider the most ecological thing would be to not make stuff.
Just not release music.
Yeah, it will just release it in a way that doesn't like. Yeah, but you know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a job then, would I?
Presumably that kind of level of consideration also comes into the merch side of things as well. Mm-hmm. Like I think you were saying when we chatted before that quite a lot of effort and thought has gone into that, more so than I would ever have expected, to be honest.
For real. Like, that's another big one. I mean, I didn't know an awful lot about the garment industry, to be honest, but we have an artist who's signed to the label who's really clued up on that, because him and his partner wanted to start making a more green clothing line, which didn't happen, but he read up about it. And we were looking at ways, as part of this broader thing we're doing of trying to be more ecological, as well as ecological, like just conscious, like not getting stuff from sweatshops, not getting stuff from places which are really damaging to the environment that you're getting it manufactured from. And it's a minefield. It's a total minefield. You kind of start going down the rabbit hole and you realise if a company's offering an ecological range, it means that they also have an unecological range, which means they're probably bolting it on and outsourcing it to someone. Reality, right? That's what we were finding. And then you'd start to find the people that did claim to have ecological credentials, that you didn't have to go far back in the supply chain before it's outsourced again. And then you're like, well, and then it becomes like, well, I guess I have to trust you that there's not child labour in making that. How do I know that the water's not coming from a local village that needs it? It becomes really difficult. And then you have all the like accreditation stuff. Like one of them was the Fair Wear Foundation, where I was like, oh, that was created by the Dutch garment industry to accredit themselves. Sounds great, right? It's just bullshit. So like we ended up finding one which was, and this is not to be like a nationalist thing, but try and find one locally in the United Kingdom preferably, because it just means there's less transport that gets to your warehouse. You don't have to put it on a plane, and top to bottom own the operation, so they know everyone in the supply chain. Solar powered factories, but it costs more, because you think a t-shirt you're buying for a tenner, do you think people who made that are getting paid well? Probably not. So it's just, you just have to accept it's going to cost a bit more. So it's just those little bits, really, and it's quite fascinating when you think about it and get into it. But I don't know. I hope more people are able to start doing it, and when you see it more and more, it starts to become a bit more normalised.
Yeah, and I guess there's also maybe an opportunity for people to be sharing knowledge about that. Like if you've done all that
100%.
research,
Yeah.
like
You tell your mate who works at label, which we've done. We're like, oh, you should check out these guys. They're really great. This bloke's really enthusiastic about it. He's happy for us to bring business to them. And then it's just sharing's caring.
yeah, exactly. Oh, speaking of caring,
Yeah.
it's a perfect segue into what I was going to ask you next, which is that, you know, we're talking about being sustainable environmentally. I think there's also something interesting around being sustainable in the way you deal with people.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a high turnover of people in this industry, both artists and behind the scenes.
100%.
So could you just tell us a bit about kind of, how you and, well, in everything you do, I guess, are trying to be sort of sustainable in how you look after the people that you're working with?
Yeah, you know, people talk a lot about mental health and how important it is, but I think we're still very reactive to it. Do you know, if you break your leg, there's no expectation you come to the office maybe for a bit. Maybe you're thinking about having more accessible kind of ways that people can get into the office. But oftentimes with mental health, someone's got to have a breakdown before you do anything about it. And then do you do anything structurally to prevent other people doing it? I think there's a real lack in duty of care on the artist side, because maybe more often than not they're independent contractors, or they're working on their own. And sure, you might have a really conscientious manager if you have a manager at all, but then where's the duty of care for that manager? So there's a big gap there, and you know, it's an industry that's got a big history of self-medicating and people having a lot of mental health issues, that it's so much pressure. Putting out a record, putting out music. I'm sure there's the same in other industries, but in this industry, it's awfully like overwhelming for people, and you see them drop off. Sadly, because there's no one looking out for it. You know, just done a record, got to go on tour, got to sell them records. Maybe you can't hack it right now. So you need a conscientious team, label, manager, promoters, etc. And I think to some degree it's changing, but on the other hand, you know, not quick enough.
Yeah, it's still a kind of capitalist
that's the
context.
I mean, that's it, isn't it? Really, we've invested all this money in you. You've got to sell them records, right? And I think it's really difficult. For example, when we relaunched Big Data, we set up a resources page, and as simple as it's just signposting Help Musicians UK, signposting people that might be able to help. We've just given some advice on the stresses that could come with signing a record deal. Sometimes it's just as simple as someone saying, I've been there, mate, don't worry about it, it's normal, so you're not beating yourself up. And then on the other hand, we partnered with Mind to put together packs, which when we have new signings, we'll send it out to them, which are new signing packs. Hey, you know what? These are some of the stresses you might come across. You may not feel you want to talk to us, but it's not a taboo. And it's, you know, not everyone takes you up on it, but if you start to normalize that part of the discussion, the other side to it's the industry side. So let's say from a label perspective, it's like, what can you do better? Okay, people could be kinder to each other. They could talk to each other a bit nicer. You could if someone's just feeling like, I can't get out of bed today and do this, that's all right. Do you know? It's like, we're not saving lives. So let's just sort of make it a bit kinder. And I think those are just a start. You know, I was chatting to someone at a major, and they've got mental health first aiders. You know, you send a lot of people on first aid courses here. You know, cut your finger, put your finger in the air, put a plaster on it. What if someone's just like had a really shitty call with a manager or someone else, and they're just like, I just can't do the rest of the day. Maybe there's just someone in the office who like spots it. Just take the afternoon off, mate. It's cool. That sounds small, but it doesn't happen a lot. So when we're talking to some of the younger people that are coming in, that we would hope would be the next generation of CEOs, like make that a priority where you can, because we have a pretty stiff upper lip, oh, blah, 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 tough it out attitude. And that's just bullshit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, I mean, the number of times that I've had dealings with particularly agents who seem to have a real anger problem.
People are so mad, aren't they?
Yeah.
So like, angry about stuff.
It's a gig, mate. Like,
do you know what I mean? Right, it's just like...
Yeah. So yeah, I think having a third party or someone, even someone who's within the organisation who can be that sounding board and offer that perspective is really
100%.
really valuable. And you mentioned before when we were chatting about this that there's also an interesting challenge that comes with that when you're pushing to be more diverse and involve a more diverse range of people. That I guess there's even more of a need for that kind of support.
100%. Like, we've been running a course, so kind of how we became connected, like Ninja, we've been running a course with South Bank Centre and Lambeth Council, ideally targeting some people between like 18 and 25, ideally from different socioeconomic backgrounds and perhaps with neurodiversity and other various kind of perhaps underrepresented groups within the industry. And then trying to look at ways in which we can help them kind of get jobs, but also even more than we realised how opaque it is for those people who might struggle with something to get in. Like little things like we said, if you can't commit to 5 days a week, 10 to 6, you're not going to get employed. Well, actually, what if you've got to look after, what if you're a carer for someone? What if you've got a chronic illness that you have to go to regularly have appointments for? Dog eat dog. And that's really heartbreaking, actually, because we all talk about wanting to get more people in, but not willing to actually be flexible enough to get them in. And then you also look at, it's one thing to say we want people from all these different communities and do nothing about making it feel safe for them to come in. Nothing to make them feel like this is a safe space to exist. Not tokenized, not just there to like be a tick box. And it can be a bit demoralising when you have all these nice ideas and then you send people out into the world and you're like, fuck, nothing's changing. But to be positive on it, they're going to be the next generation of CEOs, hopefully, if not everyone just gets nepo babied to the top. And you start to have a generation that is kinder. I think we're already seeing it in many regards. And, Ninja's an old label. It's only been around 30 years, right? Warp, 33 years or something. So that's not that long. So these people start their own companies. And one would hope that they do that and it's more flexible. So that's the other side of the coin, one would hope.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more common now, I think, for people to sort of, take mental health days or be more confident in giving that as a reason for needing time off or whatever as well. I think I hope it is the beginning of a generational change.
Sometimes you've seen it at the big corporations. And as much as that might feel a million miles away from working at a little record shop or something, that's often where the change can start. You see like blue chip companies, finance companies or whatever, stuff that feels alien perhaps. But actually, if they can show it works and they're only really caring about bottom line, it becomes an easier discussion to have. If as an industry we said, let's everyone just take Monday off. Nothing happens on Monday anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, cool. All right, brilliant. 3-day weekend. Everyone's a bit more rested. It could happen. Just takes a few people to like lobby for it. Everyone try and get Monday off, please.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that.
Yeah, right? It's an easy argument to make, isn't it?
Just sort of circling back to kind of where we started and talking about what you do at the label and your involvement with Big Data. I suspect that quite a lot of people in the room and watching this are kind of interested to know about A&R and getting signed to a label. Could you first explain a little bit about what A&R is?
Sure. I guess to some degree there's two elements to it. On the one hand, that can be going out and finding talent. So as simply as, going to gigs, looking online. And then the other part of it can be helping develop that talent. So to start with the looking for talent bit, I wish I could say the most important thing is that your music speaks for itself. Now, if we take it that it's good music, that's a great start, but certainly at a label where it's a wee bit bigger and it's perhaps looking to invest in stuff that will be able to turn a profit and develop into a career, not just a release, then we're also really looking at audience. So if you've got good, let's just take it as you've got really good music. That's just like a given. Then it's like, cool, okay. How many people would buy that music? All right. Maybe you're not sure yet. Okay, so have you done any shows? Brilliant. How many tickets can you sell? Not how many lineups have you got on a festival, because it's harder to gauge how many people are there for you. How many people will invest in you as an artist, buy a record, or buy a ticket, or buy a t-shirt? And that's a really important way to start to get an idea of an engaged buying fan base. And that's a big area that we'll look at. So, and it can be really tough sometimes to cut between hype and reality. So a lot of artists will get loads of good press, get on the radio, play loads of big gigs, but actually not have an awful lot of people buying into them, investing into them, like fans. Fans that will spend money on it. So that's a really big area, and we'll break that into, like, let's say you've put out a record, I'll look at how many records did you press, if we can find that, how many of them were sold, how much promotion did you get from record shops, because record shops are a really great barometer to people that are buying the physical. How many streams have you got? And I know that sounds awfully unromantic, but no matter how much you like physical, if you're streaming, like, you can stream in perpetuity and just keep racking up a bit of money, and that's a really good way of starting to see how that grows. So we'll look at a lot of those metrics and start to put together an idea of where an artist is at. And sometimes there's some wicked stuff. It's just not, you can get signed too soon, and then you get an advance, wicked. An advance is, say, we'll loan you the money to perhaps finish your record and put together some other, like, promotional bits or whatever. And then that'll be recoupable. We won't, that means we'll recoup that from record sales. In an independent, that, we don't do 360 deals, we just do Ninja 50-50, meaning once it's recouped, we split the profits 50-50. But if we're not quite sure that the investment would quite get to that point, perhaps it's not the right time. And our dream is for you as an artist to recoup and then start earning money from your art and build a career. So sometimes that means starting much smaller and accepting that right now people are not probably going to watch my 3-hour documentary about the time I went on tour in Tokyo. It probably is really interesting, but maybe it's a money hole. And that's cool if you just want to do it for the pure expression of art. And that's sometimes something you haven't considered as an artist too. Like, what, if any, compromises would I be willing to make to enter into this business agreement, which is what it is, right? It's a business agreement. I'm giving you some money to invest in you, and you're going to do these various bits, hopefully, to help me pay on that investment, and then we can start earning money together. That sounds really, really, really corporate, but it kind of just is what it is, right? Well, maybe you're like, I don't want to fucking compromise on that. I'm doing that 3-hour documentary, and then on top of that, I'm doing this, that, and the other. It's like, big ups. That's your artistic vision. Then maybe this relationship isn't the right one. So that's also something to consider. I think a lot of people think that that's the route, but I think more than ever, like, go DIY then. That's empowering. That's super empowering. Like, you're the master of your own vision, and you can learn about it all, you can make all your kind of connections, and you can do it exactly how you want. And hey, it might actually turn out to be completely commercially viable. But so that's one side of it. What was the second half of the question?
I think you answered the question.
Did I? Right, okay,
Yeah.
smashing. So, just the development side, very quickly, was, let's say you do get signed, let's say we're working together, then it can also be helping refine that. And again, it can sometimes feel a little bit counter to the pure artistic vision of someone, but it could be like, you know what, 3 volumes of songs with 5-minute intros, beautiful, love it, really going to be hard to get that on the radio. So maybe we could work on a radio edit. Maybe we could tweak this bit here, and hey, have you considered getting in an actual session drummer to play this bit instead of like those samples? And it's just helping navigate those bits and refine the package. So that's another part of the A&R, is working creatively with an artist or group or whatever to get that packaged, ready to be put into the world.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was, you definitely answered the question.
Okay, right on. Cool.
On that theme of, sort of going the DIY route first, trying things out, it might be interesting if you could just give us a little insight onto the sort of type of journeys that the artists you're working with have been on up to the point of getting signed.
Yeah.
I think when we chatted before, there were two quite contrasting examples that you mentioned.
Yes.
Can you remember who they are? No.
Was one Bicep?
Yeah, one was Bicep,
Yeah.
the other one was Black Country New Road.
Okay, yeah, right on. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, when we talked a wee bit about community, right? So that community can be as simple as people that come to your shows, right the way through to just a massive fan base. And I like the word community because actually, how many times have you like gone to gigs and you see the same faces, and then maybe you're like start becoming mates, or you go to shows with your buddies, and that is a community thing, right? From the smallest level to the biggest levels. And Bicep started with their blogs and then their shows that they were doing. And way before they did an album, they had a whole community of people that were completely engaged in what they were doing. And you can't manufacture community. It is or it isn't. It is legitimate or it's vacuous. So that's a really, really great, that's a dream for a label, right? Because more often than not, as a label, you're just elevating the work an artist has already done. Look how amazing that is. These people have done this. Let's get it into more people's ears and eyes and into their wallets. And then you build on that, right? The other side of it is, you look at someone like Black Country who hadn't been around as long, but they were part of a really exciting scene around the Windmill and the Speedy Underground stuff, and there was a lot of buzz, and people were going to their shows, and they were really avid, and you could just start to sense that this was, maybe they'd done, I think, 2 7-inches or something beforehand, so not a huge amount of evidence yet for how big it could be, but you can just see that the people were just ready to just throw themselves behind that project as a fan base. And so for some folk it will take years to build that, but if it's legitimate, you'll enjoy every part of it. And for others it can just happen really fast. You just, right moment, right time, you've got the right kind of people around that it just touches them, and they want to go on that journey with you.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, just those two different journeys that have led them to the same point of being signed to the same label, I guess.
Exactly, and that's why it's sometimes quite difficult because there's just so many routes, right? You could start DIY doing like the things you want to do it, and actually, because it's so genuinely to you as an artist or whatnot, it just builds a massive amount of love and interest, and then actually a label can come along and be like, this actually is totally viable. Perhaps we wouldn't have been able to do it if you hadn't already done that. But you've put in that work, and we'd love to go on that journey with you and invest in it. So sometimes starting DIY will lead you to that. You look at like stuff around the Smell in LA, all these DIY artists just like doing a thing, being in that venue, that little DIY punk venue, and then some of them just go off and become really culturally important. It's wicked.
Yeah, amazing. And on that DIY sort of vein, something we haven't touched on yet is you also run a small label yourself.
Yeah.
So how does that A&R process differ between like a beast like Ninja Tune and your label, which is First Terrace?
Yeah, we're avidly loss making, but no. Do you know what? That kind of falls into the other side of things I was making. That was never started as a commercial venture. We're fortuitous in that it's become self-sustaining, but I run it with a friend of mine, and we said, look, if we wouldn't both if we wouldn't both buy it, we shouldn't do it. That's the minimum, which doesn't always happen at a bigger label. Something just makes financial sense. It kind of works with the brand of the label. Cool. And it's really about trying to do the community stuff we talked about, in the sense like working on a project with someone that can be, all right, we'll go out together in Berlin, we'll set up this interactive thing in someone's basement. It'll be dead chunky, but it'll be really fun, and you get all your friends down and you sell some records, and then you go from there, but you try and give as much creative collaboration is possible. Whether 9 times out of 10 it makes no financial sense, but it's just because the most important thing for us is like, this has to exist. Let's just do this record. Let's like work with this person and have fun with it. Make friends, not contacts. It sounds dead corny, but that's been my philosophy. And then I've had a lot more fun since I've done it that way. So that's sort of been that, really. And you know what? Then when it goes well, it's so validated. Because when a couple of them have gone well, you're like, there was no compromise on this. That's so nice. Yeah.
I feel like maybe that's an amazing message to end on.
Yeah, hopefully.
No compromise, hope it goes well, and feel so validated.
Yeah, worst case scenario, right? I've got 300 records that I wanted to own anyway. So, do you know what I mean? So.
I think we should probably wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Alex.
No, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And also, a huge thank you to the organisations and funders that have made this possible: Arts Council England, PRS Foundation, Audio Technica for the sound, Pirate, Ableton, our partners, and most importantly, huge thank you for Alex Ives. Give it up for Alex.
Thank you for having me.